But
All good.
much better today, rested.
All right, welcome everyone. It is September 17th, 2024. It's the board briefing for the Board of County Commissioners. And please let the record reflect, there are 4 commissioners present in the hearing room. That's Commissioners Jordan, Waldrop, French, and Kearns. Commissioner CUNY is out. And we are going to lead off with several updates here from Under Sheriff Kevin Ritchie. Take it away.
All right, good morning. So the first thing I have for you is it's a mobile data computer replacement order for next year or this year. It's for 20 laptops. The reason this is being added is because we have 20 laptops that are older and the software, I guess there's a Windows 10 or Windows 11 update that's coming and they don't comply and they can't be updated. So we have to replace some of those older computers with this. IT was going to be here. I don't see them to kind of explain the tech part of it because you've just heard what I know about the tech. But apparently we can't use them anymore, so we have to replace them. It's expensive. Yeah. Tech doesn't work. It better be. Yeah. The cost is a total of $99,425. It's split between the IT laptop budget and the county or the SCSO laptop budget. The second is a contract that it came across our desk as something that kind of slipped through the cracks. It was a company. It's Quebrado Media was doing a documentary, and they did some interviews on the campus with SCSO personnel and Spokane police personnel. This contract came through. John was aware of it and okayed it, but there's some indemnification language, so it need to come to the DOCC. But the filming's already been done, and this is just there was no cost or anything like that. It was just a documentary that someone's doing on. And I honestly, I've looked and I've tried to find. I don't even know what the documentary is about. To be honest, this is a housekeeping thing because of the language, but there's no cost, and John was aware of it. I don't know if Mr. Anderson knows any more about it.
Yeah, it's also so initially I know a number of the interviews with the sheriff's office and the documentary included Spokane Police Department as well, because they were interviewing them and doing some stuff with them. But we brought this to the full board because they didn't do filming at, other than just inside the sheriff's office, so at other places on the county campus. So we just wanted to make sure it covered the entirety of the county campus.
The third item is it's a contract with Refined Media. Mike Weaver done some filming for us before for recruitment videos. These are videos that the training unit is putting together for use of force training. And so he's going to come in and film some videos for like scenario type videos for us to use for our in-service training. The cost is $13,250. It'll come out of training budget. It's stuff that was budgeted for something else that they're not going to use, and so we're not asking for any additional budget or anything like that. They're just going to move stuff around within their budget. They were going to do some red dot training, I think, this year, and it's been pushed out to next year, so they're going to use some of that money for that. So, and then that's all I have. There was a SRD contracts on here, but those have been pushed back to next week or the week after.
Any questions? All right, thank you. Oh,
Sorry, I just, as it still claiming the newbie card here. So with tech and IT, does and maybe this is more of a question, Scott, for you, but does every department have their own IT budget, or is that unique in the sheriff's office because of the unique technology needed for the deputies? Because I know IT has an overall, and we approved a big purchase for computers across the organization. I think earlier this summer.
We budget for replacement computers on a scheduled basis. That's through IT. The sheriff's department have the ruggedized versions of those, so they're unique in that regard. IT still budgets for annual replacement. I believe this went beyond what the annual replacement was for IT. So then sheriff's department identified some budget areas that they could utilize the additional purchase of the IT laptops from. Yeah, but typically it's all through IT, handled that way.
Thank you.
Yep.
Did I get that right, Randy?
It's a third.
He was just coming in the room, so.
Thank you.
Threw it at you.
Right, Ashley Callan,
Extra early.
that's
Good
great.
morning. How are you all doing today?
Doing well.
I'm well. Where is Commissioner CUNY?
Out.
Trip.
It's just not the same. So I am here today to request that the board allow the court to sign a contract with AOC to reimburse us for interpreter expenses. This is a contract that we got in place back in 2022. Prior to that, it wasn't open to courts of our size. And so as soon as they broadened eligibility, I jumped on the chance to have the state reimburse us for some costs that we're required to incur. It is not a giant amount and it is a fair amount of workload to submit the reimbursement, but every little bit helps. So with the board's permission, I would like this to be on the consent agenda next week or the following week so we can get that contract in place.
Are you confident it'll be the 30,700? Cause it says maximum, so I figure that's kind of an up to, but you're sure we'll get the full amount?
Yes, we will for sure receive that amount and I will make sure that it is all spent.
Cool.
What we have done in the past is when we get to the third quarter of the state fiscal year, if it looks like we haven't spent as much as we thought we were going to, then we have instructions translated, which translation is reimbursed fully. It's not just half the cost. That's part of the signage that we put up that was used with these funds. Again, just to make sure that all of the state reimbursement that is available to the court is expended.
So just a quick question. So you were saying in previous years, like our court size is larger?
Yep.
And so there wasn't reimbursement, but now they've
Correct.
expanded it?
Yep. Yeah, they,
We were just taking that all out of our own funds. Okay,
correct.
Okay.
And yeah, back in 2022, they decided to expand it to all courts. And so every little bit counts.
Yes. What is the average amount that we generally spend on those services?
About 80,000 per year, and that's across all case types. If a case is filed in our court that was filed by another state entity, meaning the prosecutors or the AGs or the schools in insurancy, then those costs are borne by them. So this is all civil, domestic, guardianship, anything like that. All right.
Thank you.
We are just, since I'm here and I had 5 minutes, I'll do one more minute. We have been asked to come in 2 weeks to present to the board on our 2025 budget. Is there anything specifically that the board would like to make sure that the court addresses? Commissioner French? Okay, we're
think
just going
that-
blind.
I think the spreadsheet we had, kind of the itemized thing, there was a large chunk that was just something like court operations. So if you
People.
dive into sort of what that is,
Okay,
that'd probably be at least one thing.
okay, perfect.
I think it's principally the supplemental ask that you're requesting that's above your 2024 target. And then
Okay.
there may be some additional questions the board will have based on those conversations.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Thank
just
you.
Trends, things that you're seeing where there's continuous increases that we need to know about.
All right. We shall see you in 2 weeks then. You guys have a good rest of the day. Thanks.
All right, George.
Good morning, everyone. Aiden is gonna go over our 2023 Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report. Fancy HUD language for how did we do this last year, so.
Yeah, so thank you, everybody, for meeting with us this morning. So the CAPER is essentially our year-end report to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. It's an evaluation of our accomplishments, actions taken, utilization of resources during the program year. Essentially, how did we do to the effect of what we were expected to do at the start of the program year? When I talk about the program year, that leads into the next slide on the period of the performance, which occurs during the July 1st of 2023 and ended on June 30th of 2024. That's the next slide. Thank you. And the CAPER includes all of our federal programs. So that's the Community Development Block Grant, or HOME, the Home Investment Partnership Program, or HOME for short, and the, excuse me, I said HOME, I meant CDBG. I apologize. And then the Emergency Solutions Grant, or ESG programs, essentially community development, affordable housing, and homeless services. All of those programs are what is evaluated during that program year. I do want to note that ESG funding did not particularly have a program associated with it during that period of performance, and therefore no accomplishments are available for that particular portfolio, but all of those accomplishments will be reported in next year's CAPER, as we do have some programs that are going to be utilizing those funds from the last year. Next slide, please. So the chart you see before you is essentially a condensed summary of what our expected accomplishments were for each goal and what our actual results were. I do want to note that this table was essentially a work in progress as we're finishing up, but this is pretty much 90% complete, if not 100%. As you can see, we hit our marks for the area revitalization, human services, micro enterprise assistance areas. The affordable housing area, we under accomplished, but we expect to actually meet our criteria next year, or actually overachieve just from the amount of projects that we have currently planned in place or are in progress. So that's why you see a little bit underperformance there. I would also like to note that each one of these programs is an evaluation of the CDBG and HOME programs. So both of them are combined, that have the associated goals combined with all of that together.
Just a question, is this an annual report card basically?
Correct.
And then the expected goals, are those basically self-set by the county? We hope to accomplish X, and then you're kind of reporting how we did.
Yeah, effectively what we do is we take all the folks that have put in a request for proposal and have been awarded funding, and they say, if funded, we'll do X. And that's how we come up with those numbers. We generally try and be really conservative with those numbers to make sure that during an application, when folks are trying to show how much they can do, generally if we back off a few percentage points, we get closer to that norm. One thing with the affordable housing projects is if we fund or grant funds for 150 units, usually there's a construction leg. So that's kind of what Aiden was referencing there. So we'll see that in future years. It's just we didn't get there this year.
I also want to note that for many of our projects, because of the way that period of performance works for some capital projects in the Community Development Block Grant and for HOME, some of those have currently started construction but have not finished, and may be finishing after that July 30th deadline. So some of them may be done but can't be reported in this year's CAPER. And that's just kind of the way that the report card kind of ends up being. Next slide, please. So unspent resources I want to touch on. We had quite a few additional resources that could not be expended during our RFP cycle, or maybe some projects may have been canceled during the program year for unexpected reasons or outcomes. All those funds will be reallocated towards future years. So none of that is essentially lost, but we just put that towards future programming. Any unspent, no unspent funds will be returned to HUD. We just take the inputs from our community members on what their new year priorities are and allocate them accordingly. And like I had mentioned, several of the capital projects for the 2023 program year did not start and will show in the 2024 CAPER. Next slide, please. So I do want to mention, this says that the CAPER will be available. It is currently available on the HCD webpage. So anybody in the public can go onto our website and download a full draft copy and look over the caper and provide any public comments to our department, and we can include that in a public comment summary page that will be included in our submission to HUD as well. And we will also provide that summary page to both the HCDAC and to the Board of County Commissioners as well. Next slide, please. So the public comment period for this particular report is a 15-day public comment period. We held our HCDAC meeting on Thursday, September 12th and opened it, and that will last until September 27th. We will be coming back next week to get approval of submission from the Board of County Commissioners, and with that approval, we will then submit the caper after that public comment period has ended. And albeit we'll also provide that summary page to the commissioners as well, so that you can see if any public comments were made, what that information may provide. Next slide, please. And then this slide is just the motions that were used for the HCDAC to open the public comment period, and then an advance motion to end it, so we don't have to necessarily come back to them. Again, all of those comments will be made available to the advisory committee and to the Board of County Commissioners. And with that, I open for any questions that the commissioners would have.
Any questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, that brings us to Scott Chesney.
Good morning, Commissioners. We are here. Very simple request today. We are putting together the scope of work for the planning update grant and a letter of support and recommendation from the county board required by Commerce. We have that on your agenda for next week. And that lets us get our paperwork into Commerce by the 30th, which is their deadline. This is the overall general planning grant, $700,000 over 2 years. We have selected a planning consultant for that, and so you will see another contract coming before you to start addressing those dollars. These dollars from Commerce are available back to July 1st this year. And so there'll be some activity that's already taken place that we'll be using to get caught up on our billing. This is separate from the Climate and Resiliency Act funds, which we've already put together. And again, another consultant has been selected for that, and we are negotiating that scope and budget as well. But this one is pretty simple. It's just sending Commerce their paperwork and a letter saying, yep, we're supporting this.
Any questions? Mr. Walter?
How is the communications pieces going? I know we signed a contract with a communications consultant to
Tom
help
MacArthur,
with
right.
developing a much more forward-facing website and materials around the update, which I know is happening this fall, right?
Yes. We have interviewed one web company for potential designing the web page behind our main page. We're looking at another option with Eastern Washington that may be able to do that. Tom is starting to do his own outreach. Some of that is dependent on getting these consultants up and running, and so we've got our technical teams moving forward. But we did have our first meeting with 4 technical advisory teams yesterday. And so that was a kickoff, more of a meet and greet. They will meet again in October. That's pretty much the real kickoff for all the public activities past these kickoff meetings.
So what are the technical advisory?
Housing, transportation, rural, and climate. They're based on GMA specific elements. As these groups get together over the course, we're expecting them to meet every other month. So it's not a big workload on them, but a couple hours meeting every other month. Then we will populate their agenda with research from our staff and the consulting staff. As we move into 2025, we'll convene a bigger land use group, which will start to synthesize all of that information coming forward. And in these cases, we're sharing information and seeking information for pretty specific interests in those areas. As we broaden into that land use, the broader outreach out to neighborhoods and the other pieces start to take place.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right, Ben Bradabo.
Morning, commissioners. Sure, thank you. Today to talk about the Newman Lake Flood Control Zone District annual budget setting process. So this is a presentation of the budget with the goal of setting a hearing date a week from now with a resolution to set a hearing and then having a public hearing a couple weeks later to hear any comments on that. So this is an overview of the budget. As the top line, there's no assessment increase recommended. But the big project that's going on right now with the district, as you know, is the water quality project that's largely funded by ARP. And so there's some, the budget includes a loan of about $300,000 and final value to be determined, but to cover the additional funding that's needed for the project. We're using the remaining balance from a capital grant that was given to the district a number of years ago as part of the funding. And then potentially it's going to reduce the district budget fund balance down to the minimum amount that's set by the district manual. And so that's where it might go. We're still trying to figure out some of the key tasks. We have a meeting set with the Department of Natural Resources next week to talk about the letter that you submitted. Thank you, submitted to about removing the piles. And so we'll see where that goes. So there's potentially some cost reductions if that were to come through, and we'll determine the final loan amount that's needed. And then finally, is if additional ARP funding was available, that would be much appreciated by the district. If that were available as ARP funds are looked at this fall. So with that note there as well. Other items that are happening, the new system is going to cost more to run because it's a larger, with more oxygen in there, but the district budget allows for their standard operating procedures, potentially a surface alum treatment, if that continued weed treatment on the lake for milfoil, and then water quality monitoring that will continue as well. Those are the key points. The next slide is an outline of the budget, and it, again, an eye chart here. It really the bottom line on the bottom right is that it reduces the fund balance for water quality down to that $70,000 that's dictated by the minimum the district manual. So from that is potentially into next year, looking even to 2026, is the need for assessment increases. But we're talking with the advisory board on that to rebuild the fund balance if that were all come to pass. There's a couple members of the advisory board that are talking about assessment increases this year going into 2025. And as you see, that's not there. But we're talking with them about how to retain a healthy fund balance for that. Next slide is an outline of the feedback that we're giving. We've talked to the advisory board. We're planning a meeting with a public meeting in early October to go over these things and also provide an update on the ARP project. And then key dates for the board is to set the public hearing, which should be on October 15th. Any questions?
Yep.
So so just so I'm trying to understand here, so the loan amount, you're not sure how much.
Correct.
But what's the repayment source for that loan then? Is that the assessments, like you build up the fund each year and then use it to pay down the?
That's correct. So it would be a 5-year loan taken from a county loan given to the district, and it would be paid off with assessment payers. And so that's part of the potentially the need for into 2026.
Right, to look at what that would look like. Okay. Thank you.
We'll wait as long as we can to determine that loan amount based on how the project's going, how conversations with the DNR go. We have enough. The project is 80% funded, 85% funded. So we have a long runway of cash before we decide what that final loan amount needs to be.
If you were seeking additional ARP dollars, like you mentioned, how much?
So the loan amount that's proposed there is 300,000. Ideally, we wouldn't have to take that much of a loan. So whatever the loan amount is, if it were 300, half or something on that order would be great. 150,000 from ARP additional funding would be appreciated. But this budget lines it out that it isn't required in order to complete the project.
Okay, minimum match right now.
I don't know that there's any match for ARP. If there is match required.
There's no match required.
Yeah, so there is district funding going into the project though, so there is some assessments are paying a portion of it, but additional.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, next up, Public Works, Jake Saxon. Along with Kyle.
Hi. All right, so this is gonna be a quick one. Here to talk about the awarding or selecting a consultant for real estate services. Public Works has the need for consultants, real estate consultant services on various public works projects to complete real estate or right-of-way activities. Per RCWs, this is professional services. Basically, the activities that we have to perform are appraisal review, and relocation services or relocation assistance. Additional efforts that might be included are property acquisition or property management. For federal grant projects, we're required to use, the use of consultants must follow the WashDOT local agency guidelines or requirements for advertisement, interviewing, and selection. So this RFP was specifically catered to meet those requirements. And then we expect to use the award on the projects of the second phase of the Harvard Road reconstruction, the Appleway Wellesley roundabout, the Bruce Pion roundabout, a safety project on Wall Street and Graves, and then Gordon Road Bridge over Little Deep Creek. So the selection team included myself and then 3 other members from our Public Works staff, 2 in right away, and one of our Public Works project managers. Upon reviewing the RFPs, interviewing 4 firms, the team recommends the award to Contract Land Staff as the most qualified firm, and that is on the agenda for next week. Any questions?
Mr. French?
So do they actually have experience with regard to meeting the federal requirements with regard to right-of-way acquisition?
Yes, yeah, so they're not actually gonna be doing the acquisition, we are, but they are on the WashDOT approved list for appraisals. Essentially what we need them for specific, the largest project on this is the Harvard Road one, where we've got 60 parcels where a large portion of them are gonna be full or comprehensive appraisals as opposed to waiver valuations. So we're gonna have them do all the valuations of all those parcels, so they're uniform, and we have uniform values for everybody out on that project. And sorry, lost where I was going with that. But yes, they do have experience doing that. The appraisals that they'll prepare, that's specifically what they're there for, and then we'll do the acquisition.
So who will actually do the negotiations with the property owners as you are acquiring or negotiating to acquire property for right-of-way?
Our real estate.
Our team. Okay, all right. And our team has been trained and everything to meet federal requirements and stuff. I mean, I'm sensitive because of Bigelow and the mess we got into with that. I just don't want to go back there.
Yeah, in
That's why
fact,
I'm inquiring to make sure that we got all our bases covered.
they use the federal process on all right-of-way acquisition now,
Okay,
just in case we've got a dime of federal dollars at the tail end. So we just do everything uniformly per the federal guidelines.
good. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I think we're good. Thank you. Alright. And then Kyle, looks like you've got one more here. Bigelow Gulch
Circling back to talk about
names.
a follow-up from the public meeting that was last week.
Those of you that don't know, this is Chris Martin. Chris is our new Monty. And so we have Monty and we have new Monty. Chris is name is our
Like old Bigelow.
Perfect.
Right. So we just wanted to provide you some background of what this process looks like. Actually, when we name a public roadway, it's pretty rare. But there is a tremendous amount of county code involved and process and working closely with emergency services and GIS to make sure that everything meets their criteria. They certainly have kind of the most at stake here when it comes to emergency services. So they've helped us and advised us along the way, and I'll let Chris kind of walk you through some of this.
Okay, thank you. So Matt asked me to kind of go over our general road naming process. I would say most of our new roads come from flats. So in those cases, the developer will provide us the names. We will vet them along with emergency services. And when I say emergency services, I specifically am referring to Spokane Regional Emergency Communications. So they assist us with all of those. We have an employee in IT that vets roads on their behalf. So CRP changes are rare. So in the case of Bigelow Gulch, it's a CRP, a county road project. Can you go slide? So Public Works is responsible for choosing the names, and we use County Code 3.14.10, specifically 3.14.021, and you can. It's on the screen, but there's so many criteria that you can't read any of them. So that's just to give you an idea of how many factors we have to consider when naming a road. But on the next slide, can you go to the next slide? We got 3 examples that are quite important to us. We can't use existing road names in part or in full. Can't use old in a road name, and a road cannot intersect with the same road twice. So CRP road name changes are vetted by Public Works and Emergency Services as well. So I can get into the Bigelow Gulch naming process. Those names, Lancer and Newton, they were chosen in 2022. Those 2 roads were pre-vetted roads. I'm not sure why they picked them, but they were roads that we'd already vetted and that were available to use as road names. And so our Public Works traffic analyst and the rep from IT that helps us on behalf of SHREC.
So I'm curious, you say item 2, we can't use old, but yet we have old Argonne Road. And so was that just too old, or
My assumption is that likely predates when this code was written on this, and it probably creates an issue for emergency services. They are very explicit about that, because in an emergency situation, somebody's panicked, somebody's in distress, they may or may not include that word in the road name, which can throw off emergency services. So we haven't retroactively destroyed every use of the word oiled. The code has been updated with input from SHREC to make sure that we don't any further.
Okay, thank you.
And SHREC is the name that we use for Spokane Regional Emergency Communications. So those 2 roads were picked because they've been vetted. They were provided to Nate Thompson, our traffic engineer. He provided them to the GIS manager at SHREC and also to Fire District 9. Once they approved and said they didn't have any issues with it, Nate Thompson, our traffic engineer, forwarded that to Matt Zarakar, who approved it. So we didn't involve the public until we did the public notice. And when we did the public notice prior to the hearing, we didn't hear from anybody from the public with regards to those road name changes. We do have a possible scenario that would work if we do want to make a change. If you could go to the last slide. Should be one more. Yeah, there you go. So hard to see. So originally when we worked on this, Orchard Prairie is the road that intersects right almost in the middle of the existing Bigelow Gulch. So one option is that we, instead of extending SB down to the new Bigelow Gulch, we could take Orchard Prairie, thank you, and we could just continue Orchard Prairie to the southeast until it intersects with the new Bigelow Gulch. That would be a pretty simple change for us. It's been vetted. It works with addressing. Monty can speak to that if we need to, but that is just one option. It would be fairly simple to implement, and I think there was somebody who brought up that option at the hearing.
And just for a reminder here for the commissioners, this is that third bullet point from that earlier consideration. This is a road that intersects the same road twice, therefore cannot have one contiguous name.
Correct.
But otherwise, that's kind of the process and how we got to where we made our recommendations on this. We do have a timing issue here. It's looking like that construction's going very well, and we would like to, well, refrain from using the word need, but it sure seems like a need. When you open a road, every road needs to have a name. Emergency services start on day one. And it looks like we're gonna have this road open here, probably the latter half of October, but before the end of October. So things are going well on the project, actually. It's gonna be pretty awesome. Let's go take a look.
So Kyle, so you're saying Orchard Prairie will come down and then pick up that little portion of what is currently proposed as Lancer would be Orchard Prairie, and then Orchard Prairie all the way down to the New Bigelow. What about the other half of what's proposed Lancer?
It would remain Lancer.
Okay.
And you could make the argument, as you see geographically, it looks like SB is pretty contiguous with that portion in blue down below. I could make the same argument that says it should stay Orchard Prairie because that is a paved road, and SB to the north there is unpaved. So you would have more of a, even though there's a jog, there's more of a contiguous paved road. Really, we don't have a stake in the game, whichever way we would go. We just need to follow all the protocol. So the amendment could be Orchard Prairie as it continues to the southeast and intersects with Bigelow Gulch. And so that portion from Orchard Prairie to the east and south, that section of red and blue would retain the name Orchard Prairie Road. And then that section where it goes off to the west, northwest, and then goes back down to the south would be Lancer. If you so wish to make that change.
Question, I think I missed when you were going over, but where do the names come from in the first place? Lancer, people were just like, where does that even come from?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure where they came from. What I do know is that they were pre-vetted road names. And so it was vetted by Public Works.
A traffic code seems, so there's a lot there to do a lot of, there's other criteria. Of course, does it exist elsewhere in the community is a big one here. I think there's, they try to make them easy to pronounce and spell to the best of their ability to make life easier. So they try to have a couple in the queue for whenever we need them. But this is a pretty rare incident for us. And so we want to get out the dictionary and go from page 1 to 1,000. We can go through a lot of the words and vet them all. But we just try to have a couple acceptable ones to emergency services in our pocket.
Have you talked to some of the individuals that came down last Tuesday? So I know some of them spoke to, it seemed that they really had a concern about the name Lancer. Seemed to be their big issue. So
we've had email communications primarily and a few phone calls from them.
Okay. And what are their thoughts on this proposal?
I haven't heard from anybody other than a couple of emails that came from Amy Fair, which I responded to. One was, can we just name it? I think it was Old Bigelow.
Okay.
And we addressed that at the hearing. So I didn't get a response. I responded via email. I didn't hear back. Our front desk have got no calls since last Tuesday that I know of. I've asked them this morning. They have received no calls with regards to the name change.
Okay.
Yeah, I've gotten a couple. Thanks, Amy, for forwarding those on, but most people that have commented were, oh, Old Bigelow, but we just have to let them know that that's no longer an option. with the updates to how we're trying to do better with our naming and emergency management. So just some education needed there. I don't know if that was clear in the hearing last week, that was a policy in the actual policies, set of policies, that you couldn't do the old name. So we'll clear that up.
Reiterate that at the public hearing. So right now, the documentation in the hearing has this in here. If the commissioners would like to make that switch with Orchard Prairie, we can update that documentation in advance of the hearing.
Commissioner French?
Yeah, I'd like to be able to carry the Orchard Prairie Road name all the way down. It'd be better just to have two names on that road instead of, and the other thing is Orchard Prairie has a tie to the community much more than some of the others and stuff. And so as long as you can get Orchard Prairie Road on one side of a sign that, you know, you don't have to wrap around the edge, that'd be great.
We've got to make extra large stocks.
Yeah, or to stretch the sign out.
Or sign stretcher.
That'd be my desire.
Looks like we have three head nods in that direction. Okay, so we'll work on updating the information so that it's included in the public documentation with a new exhibit as well. And we'll take that as our direction.
Thank you. All right. We're gonna hand it over to you guys. Take it away. Joined by our friends from the airport.
Thank you, Commissioner Kearns. We're here with two items today, but before we get into that, I'd just like to recognize Randy to the commissioners again with great thanks. We spent two pretty intense days last week with the credit rating agencies for the bonds and briefing them, touring them, and Randy was really integral to that and spent a great deal of time with us. We just really appreciate that. So thank you, Randy, and we're fingers crossed, looking for those really good ratings to come out here in the very near future. But just wanted to say to the commissioners how much we appreciate all the time spent by Randy, Scott, and others to help on this. So we have two items today, a land acquisition and a land sale. The good news is the land acquisition number is very small. The land sale number is very large. So that's what we always like. If we could bring up the slides, please, the PSA for land acquisition. Thank you.
Gina emailed those to us this morning, if anybody wants to pull them up on their laptops.
Thank you. Just advance. Thank you. This is the overview of where the property is located that we would be requesting permission from the commissioners to purchase. You can see it's two rather small parcels, one a little over 5 acres and one 1 acre parcel. Next slide, please. This will give you a better idea of how these parcels are oriented with regard to the existing airport property. You can see these parcels are basically contiguous with the airport property and consistent with other acquisitions that have been made in either the ACZ 1, 2, or 3 areas as per the city and county zoning ordinance. So the total acquisition would be 6.26 acres. Next slide, please. Here's the orientation of the slides within the ACZs for you to see. As you can see, they're very close to the center line extended of the runway. These are areas that we would prefer not to see any kind of development occurring within. Next slide. Again, just a closer view of where the parcels are located with regard to the ACZs. Next slide, please. And again, just a closer look at the subject parcels and the parcel ID numbers. Next slide, please. Also, the parcels are located in areas of higher noise exposure, which is, again, is just an incompatibility. So we want to make sure we don't put anything in areas of high noise exposure. Next slide, please. The current owner is West Plains Development. The property was appraised and the appraisals were reviewed. The valuation of the first parcel, the 5-acre parcel, is $199,000, and the 1-acre parcel is $58,000 for a total of $257,000. Next slide, please. And this is just evidence of the appraised value. Sorry for the eye test on that, but it's there in the right numbers. Next slide, please. So what we're asking for the commissioners to do today is to approve the joint resolution to acquire these parcels in the amounts stated.
Any questions on these?
Thank you. Go to the next item, which is the sale of airport surplus property. Next slide. The sale of the property is proposed to an LLC, Runway Properties Holdings. This LLC was formed by a multinational company with U.S. and international manufacturing plants. The company has dozens of manufacturing plants around the world, and they offer a comprehensive line of building related materials, so supplying building trades industries. Their site requirements included the need for rail service. So with the rail coming into the area around the transload facility, this is very consistent with the types of opportunities we want to pursue, businesses that require rail service. We think there'll be about the potential for about 1,000 rail cars a year right now is what we understand. And they will import materials and actually build and assemble products. And those finished products will be shipped out by truck to locations throughout the Pacific Northwest and Canada. So this company was specifically looking for a place to manufacture and distribute from in the northwestern part of the United States. Next slide, please. Here is a depiction of the development concepts for the property. You can see the property is located on the far western edge of Airport Surplus Property Holdings and just north of the transload facility. You can see the trunk rail line coming in and some ideas about how that property would be developed over time. We spent a considerable amount of time going over the APZ. So we used ACZs for Spokane International. We use APZs for Fairchild. And the uses that the company is proposing are compatible with the APZs, and that coordination has been done with Fairchild. So as you can see, it's just basically a rectangular site, and you would see facilities being constructed not far from the Parker Aerospace facilities, which are the two buildings with the white membrane roofs that you see on the right of the diagram. Next slide, please. This is just another concept, and you can see the rail line curving into the site from our rail, and we would process a rail easement that connect the property to the rail line. Next slide, please. Again, we had the property appraised and are proposing to sell the property for its fair market value. And then we'll go to the next slide to summarize and eye test again, but the next slide, please. So the land to be purchased by this company is approximately 82 acres. Ultimately, it will settle out based on a survey, so maybe 82 plus or minus, and will be trued up at the end. The FAA land release process has already been completed. They put down earnest money of $60,000, and the purchase price again, $72,561 per acre for an estimated total of $5,950,002. Review periods, closing dates, so forth are established in the purchase and sale agreement. And Runway Property Holdings will reimburse us up to a total of $25,000 for the lot segregation plan costs and fees. We have to be able to go through the work with the city to create a sellable lot as part of a larger lot. There'll be a navigation easement that will be retained by the airport over the property. And there will be, in this case, a broker fee of 2% to a company called Century Pacific that's representing the buyer. So the last slide is the action we're asking the commissioners today is to approve the purchase and sale agreement with Runway Property Holdings for the sale of 82 acres of surplus property and the estimated amount of $5,950,002.
Any questions?
Just some context. Oh, sorry.
Just a general question, when you sell a property like this, how does that kind of fit into your overall budget picture and kind of the mission?
We really don't budget these types of revenues. So they basically come in as revenue over what we were budgeting because you're never exactly sure when they might close in this fiscal year or maybe next fiscal year. But the good news is that it comes in as unrestricted cash. So we can use that for our capital improvements program or operating expenses, but mostly the unrestricted cash is used for our non-grant funded capital improvement projects. So it just helps us to be able to afford to do those types of projects. You're welcome. Just some additional context I wanted to offer too, and I wanted to say thanks to our board member, Commissioner French. This company had come in and out of this process several times. And while they were working on their site selection, and Commissioner French maintained contact with them and really brought them kind of back to the table for us, and spent even his own time showing them the site on more than one occasion. And again, talking about all the things that the site really had in terms of its accessibility, the rail, of course, but the bigger picture as well. So I just want to say thank you, Commissioner French, for the help on that and spending time to bring them back around after they had actually moved on in the process at one point, and we had not heard from them in some time. So we're really excited that they're coming back to our community. We're excited about their investment, excited about the job creation aspects, as well as the enhancement of the property based on our work together with the commissioners to bring rail into that section of the airport. It's very strategic. And I think over time, the idea is that we'll see more of these types of projects happening, more investment, more job creation, and putting this land back on the tax rolls, which is really important. So I just wanted to say thank you and provide that context. Thank you.
Okay. Great work.
Thank you, sir. Hopefully more to come. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
We want appropriate uses.
That's right.
And
Yes.
generating
Generating good jobs.
good jobs for the
and
community.
good tax
Great.
revenues. Yes. That's what it's all about. So thank you very much.
Will also be benefit to the county because we own the Geiger Spur rail line and stuff. And so there's fees that come to both the airport on their rail line as well as the county on our rail line that helps maintain that rail line.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, well, that does it for our printed agenda. That takes us to miscellaneous, so we'll start with Pat. Pat, media, press release, proclamations.
Yes, good morning, commissioners. So in your inboxes, late yesterday afternoon was a draft postcard and utility insert. I'd like to collect any comments on that. We can discuss it here if you have feedback verbally, or you can provide that over email, would be just fine with me. This was prepared at the board's request to help educate the public about the upcoming juvenile detention facilities and jails sales and use tax renewal. And so it's a front and back color postcard mailer. This afternoon on your agenda, you have an item to approve the funds for this. As a reminder, we went out and got some estimates, came back and shared those estimates and went with the lowest cost model. It's about between, we expect 75 to 80,000. That's why we have an upper limit of 85,000 in the procurement. And on the utility insert, that will be approximately $1,400 to $1,500, going to, I believe, 43,000 customers, which I didn't have that number last time, but that's what I've been informed from Martha Lou through Public Works. So happy to answer any questions on that item.
Any questions? And did everybody get that? Did everybody see that on their email? Okay,
Yeah.
I just wanna make sure they don't need to resend
Pat,
it.
is it possible to give you some feedback today then on it?
Pat, would you like us just to email you any
Or I can call you.
ideas or edits or anything?
Yep, that would be great. The deadline on the mailer is, we've got a little bit more time on that since the content is the same. We'll just sync up any changes. I will say on the utility insert, that is due to the printer by Friday. So shorter turnaround on the utility insert, but hoping to keep the messaging consistent on both. So if we make an update to one, we'll make an update to the other. The last item I would say is the board members who were present for the Council of Government saw a video, draft kind of preview of a video that we will have finalized for State of the County. Just got the updated voiceover recorded, and we'll be making some changes to that. So you might have that as soon as this afternoon or tomorrow to review. So that would be a third item. But these are all of this in addition to the one-page fact sheet, which has been previously produced and updated, and then potentially an additional FAQ or two to the website is bringing this project to where it needs to be in terms of you all having information to go out, educate, and do community engagement work. So if there's anything else desired outside of this, this mostly fulfills the communications plan that we had all discussed previously. I'll mention and note that we're hustling to organize a tour and media availability for tomorrow of juvenile detention, juvenile justice department with Tori, and you may be hearing from Tori or myself. It would be great to have one or two commissioners there present for the media availability or for the tour. We're hoping to have that 1 o'clock tomorrow in order to make news time and to accommodate some what we anticipate will be at least one or two, maybe all of the local TV stations and some print reporters who previously had reached out asking for same. Highlight that.
Okay. All right, thank you, Pat. Okay, any other miscellaneous? Scott?
Commissioners, you'll notice there's one item on your agenda this afternoon it's item 4E, in a matter of adopting a broadband open access policy. You may recall a couple months ago, the Broadlink team was in here and briefed on this item. It's been some time, so I just want to refresh your memory. Broadlink is, of course, trying to secure some federal dollars to build fiber infrastructure and hybrid wireless solutions. Their desire has been to enable any and all internet service providers to lease fiber, install their equipment, and be able to provide internet to citizens, and that citizens can have choices of it. So this is really, it's a policy that the Broadlink board adopted and felt it would be good if the county commissioners would also take a similar action, which said, yes, we embrace open access. We think that provides best options for our community, best options for our citizens. So this was a couple months ago, so I just wanted to remind you of that.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions on anything on the 2 o'clock? No? Okay. All right, and then you had talked about one closed session.
I got two exec sessions first. So the closed session is gonna have to happen after the adjournment of this meeting in order to comply with OPMA. That was kind of why we did it as exec sessions previously, so we can kind of put it in any order. So we have two exec sessions, both under pending potential litigation pursuant to RCW 4231.10.1I. The first one will involve the board, Scott Simmons, myself, Monty Chamberlain, and Jasper Coulter from the prosecutor's office. The second one will involve the board, myself, and CEO Scott Simmons. The first one should take about 15 minutes and no action needed. The second one should take about 2 minutes and no action needed.
Two.
All
right.
That's good for the record.
I know.
2 minutes, assuming there's questions.
We will be in executive session for approximately 17 minutes. It is 10 o'clock right now. At the conclusion of those executive sessions, we will be adjourned for the morning. We will reconvene at 2:00. There will be a closed session following this, so.
Yes.
Okay, all right, and the purpose of the executive sessions were stated by legal, so everybody, we will see you this afternoon.